Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
Hi, this is Jen Long in Denver, Colorado. First day of spring, second day of spring.
First full day of
snowstorm.
Oh, really?
Giant snowstorm, icy and cold outside. And it doesn't matter because I'm quarantined.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm here in Toronto, Sandi Satori Consulting, and it's 17 degrees here today.
Ooh.
Beautiful and warm. It's going to drop down to -1 or something tonight, but big swings. But I also am quarantined, so what the hell's the difference?
What the heck, right? So we thought we would get together and do a little podcast because we have found in talking to our clients out there in the big bad world of corporate America and corporate Canada that people need a little bit of insight on how do we handle this? How do we handle this virtual teaming? How do we handle this working remotely?
Mm-hmm.
How do we manage anxiety? How do we, all those kinds of questions sort of have been popping up in the emails and the conversations.
Yeah, and I think they're really struggling because typically if you were going to make a big shift like this into working from home or whatever, you would have a big change management process around it. But we were thrust into it, no change management. And so I think they're just struggling on how do you get through it now that it's happened?
Right. And like all change, right? It happens fast. And so prepared or not, I think this is an opportunity for managers it's a growth opportunity. In fact, it's opportunity all the way around for so many things. And so that's kind of why we wanted to get together and kind of get your head around what kind of opportunity you're really staring down and what to do about it. And maybe even to stand out of it to say, if you're thinking about it in negative terms, in a negative light, and you're anxious about it, is think about it as an opportunity.
How do you shift, right? Shift your perspective. The time is now to be positive about this because I think with everything, the news is negative, everything is negative, and we're quarantined, that's negative. It's easy to stay in negativity, especially when you're out of control, right? You're not in control of the things around you. And what we want to talk about is how do we shift that perspective to the positive and look at those opportunities in light of the negativity.
Right. How do you regain a sense of control in that light? And so I would start with change starts with you, right? And the more you resist what this is and think of it in terms that are negative and think of it in terms about focusing on the bad side of what this is, the harder it's going to be for you to get through it.
And harder for your employees to get through it, right? Because they're looking for leaders that are going to lead them through this with positive attitudes, with a positivity and lightness that they know that they're being held in a safe space.
Right. And so one of the things that when I teach leadership is I teach positive attitude. I talk about attitude and mindset are kind of one and the same, right? And I only have attitudes around things that are important to me. And so when we think about so that's great, Jen. How do I change my attitude? How do I change my mindset? And so let's kind of break it down into what maybe some of those things are. And so one of the first pieces of getting your attitude on track in a positive way is thinking about how do you generate positive energy, right? What are your sources of energy and how do you create that for yourself?
Right.
And so one of the things that you have is your physical energy, right? Your gym's closed. Right. And if you're sitting on the couch or you're in, the chair all day, yesterday I heard on the news, which always really gives me a bad feeling, sitting is the new smoking. Right. That you got to move. You gotta physically. So if you're used to going to the gym or you're used to, you can still go outside. You can still walk around.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most important things right now is we have to keep that physical energy up. And it fills you with endorphins and just gets you going, right? So if we're not getting out and getting fresh air, that's not good for your positive outlook.
Right. Right. So just because you're quarantined doesn't mean you should stay inside.
Point number one.
Point number one, keep your 6 feet of distance to strangers, but go outside, walk around.
Yeah.
My gym gave me links to the entire Les Mills catalog.
Yep.
So I can watch all those videos and jump around in my house if I want to.
That's right. That's right.
But those are the things I would say, do it. Do
Yeah.
it because you're going to get cabin fever.
Well, it's funny because there's a politician that was quarantined early on. So I think yesterday was his last day. And he talked about that, how to keep his sanity, because he was quarantined from his family as well. He had a basically set up a routine of, he was going to do fitness at this time. He was going to do, whatever during the day, but keeping that routine and keeping active helped keep his sanity.
Right. Structure has as much to do with it as well, right? So that you're not waking up every day with no clue how to manage your day.
Yeah.
So what's another source of energy for people is intellectual, right? So your mind. What are you doing with your mind? How are you thinking? What do you, are you immersing in work, or are you able to create some balance? Are you binge watching only, or are you allowing yourself to unplug and get away from the media and the news and the din?
Yeah. Well, and pick up that book that's been sitting on your nightstand for the last 3 months that you've been trying to get to. Right. So really try to keep your mind active in that way. And that's not social media. That's not listening to those crazy people on Facebook, or, looking at other people's lives on Instagram, but keeping your mind active for sure. And it's not, I do believe it's not about just working 24/7 now because you have an opportunity to do so.
Right. Right. Yeah. You got to keep your boundaries. Right. And I had a conversation with a client just this morning who's like, yeah, I'm afraid that, this is going to be an excuse for people to just work all the time because they're 5 feet from their computer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, create a healthy boundary. Right?
Yeah.
Create a healthy boundary.
Yeah.
So the intellectual stimulation is, how are you filling your energy in a positive way? So it's not work. The intellectual pursuit should be something else to maintain your intellectual positivity. The other one is emotional.
Yeah. Connection.
Right. Connection. And how talking about your feelings, identifying your feelings, being aware of what that is, and how do you stay connected, right? That isolation and video is gonna be your saving grace.
Yeah, that's right. And reach out to people more so than you have, right? So elders, for example, really need to touch base with them a couple times a day. And 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, it's going to help your mind, help you stay positive, knowing that you're helping somebody else. Because if you're not talking to them, maybe nobody is talking to them. Right. So even my staff, all working virtually right now, we check in on our Zoom call 3 times a day. Just so there's a face there, so you're not feeling so isolated. And we talk about how people are doing, talk about the cabin fever that's starting to creep in after 7 days.
And this is sort of the other advice that's been showing up, is that there's the connectivity, the Zoom meetings, the team powwows are creating structure, and they're creating some consistency. And so that's important as well. And it's an opportunity for people to share, right? I'm feeling this way. Oh, I'm feeling that too, right? So that the isolation, I'm not alone in my feelings either. Right. I'm not alone in my frustrations. I'm not alone in my whatever that might be. So that's all good information as well.
Yeah, and I really think that to that aspect, it's keeping your community going. So whether it's your work community or your social community, that you're not just disconnecting completely from it. Because reality is we're all going to go back to our social set workplaces or our lives at some point.
It's going to normalize again. Yeah.
We'll normalize. So we don't have to rebuild after that. So keep it going now.
Well, and it's also an interesting thing in times of crisis, right? When you're Zooming and you can see people's living rooms, you see, you get to know them in ways you didn't know them before. And it's like being stuck in an elevator with somebody in a weird way, right? There's a bond that forms in this moment of crisis and difference. And so it's helpful to get it's helpful to get to know people. And these bonds will live beyond
Yes.
this episode.
Yes, exactly.
So don't be afraid, right? I know that some people who are on these Zoom things are reticent to turn the cameras on.
Yes. Yes. And I've had to force my staff to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, we could just get on the phone if we're not going to look at each other.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea is to create the contact.
Yes.
And the visual nonverbals, don't forget, more of your communication is nonverbal than verbal.
Yeah.
So that's the emotional one. The last one of energy building, right? So paying attention to how do I refill all my energy in a positive way is the spiritual side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean go to church necessarily. It might for you. But what else are you really doing to reconnect to beauty, really? I mean, it's kind of what you recognize as, so this morning when I got up on the second day of spring and there was this giant snowstorm, right? Oh, it's white, it's crisp, it's quiet, right? To just go and have that moment of, it's not, there's kind of a cool thing about nothing happening.
Mm-hmm.
A calmness.
Yeah.
Tune into the calm. Allow yourself to stand on the street where nothing's open.
Yeah.
Right. And just soak that in for a second, because it's an interesting reconnection to the world.
It can be grounding, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times we have to go to nature, right? We have to leave the city, we have to venture out, we have to get away from humans. Yeah. So connect to the beauty. Don't answer the phone calls.
Yes, to the scammers. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot of, and sometimes I don't know, that's a difficult one for me a little bit. I think for people in general, because it's not a go-to a lot of times, unless you're very, very spiritual and you have a ritual. And I know a lot of people I know are meditating a lot more than they ever have. So those meditation apps are probably selling them, a lot of them. But that's a whole mindfulness, right? And that's a shift for a lot of people. But you're right, to balance it off in terms of that positivity, it is a big piece of it. So if you're not doing it, start thinking about how you can start adding that into your daily routine.
Well, and here's what I would tell you is, if you're not paying attention at that level, that's your foundational pool of energy. That's where it all comes from, right? That's the basis. And if you're not connecting there, it's why so many people get fried and overwhelmed and overtaken by things, because they're not standing out of it long enough to understand there are things here at play that are bigger than I am.
Right.
There, and it's and that's the whole side of the mindfulness, is to allow yourself to be to reconnect to your breath, to whatever that is, that allows you to center and stabilize.
Right.
And if you're not doing that, and you're only worrying about your emotional, physical, intellectual, you're drawing on a very short reservoir.
And you could continue to be in chaos, right? Even though you're drawing on those other three, when you're not stabilized and grounded, that chaos is, whether you feel it or not, you're probably on a tipping point to go there, or it's around you and you're just choosing to live in it.
Right. And so this is connecting for me into another piece of I've got a link from Marcus Buckingham, who did a short thing on 5 things you can do as a leader in this time. And while he was talking about team and all that, one of the things that he said, which I thought is that you've got to, your role in this is to make sense of the crazy, right? As a leader and a manager, part of what you're doing to stabilize is to make sense out of what all this means, and how do we stay focused on what we can control. But part of that was that that you've got to, if you're going to create confidence for people, you have to be centered on what's important for you, right? This is an opportunity for you to recenter on your own values
Mm,
and say, this is what's important, right? And if you know as a manager and leader what's important and what that means to your team, that helps them have confidence
right.
in what's going on, right?
Mm.
And so stemming from the mindfulness to the knowing what's important and being able to articulate the values to be able to then translate into how that shows up as taking what makes everybody else anxious and creating confidence out of
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So do you think, Jen, for teams that haven't really had that conversation about what those values are,
it.
do you think that might be a good first step in now, even though we've been all quarantined for a week?
Right.
Because I'm envisioning teams that are kind of thrown into this work from home environment and not knowing what their manager is expecting of them, and not setting out those clear expectations, or feeling that they have to be tied to their desk because if the manager happens to call, they need to be there. And so I
Hmm.
wonder if that would be a really good exercise for a lot of our listeners early next week to
Yeah.
take a step at talking about those values are.
Right. Right. Because then that helps me know it's okay. It's okay. And I know, and I shouldn't have to feel bad because I've got kids in the house and they're going to distract me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. My hours are going to get weird because I'm going to have to work when I can
Yeah.
and try and stay focused as much as I can. But things are going to happen.
Right.
I'm going to get interrupted.
Right. So if you have a value around positive intent and knowing that, there's kids in the background, but the positive intent of the person working is that they're going to do as much as they can do, be as productive as they can, then it's okay. Right. What a
Right.
stress relief
Right.
to
Right.
know that everybody, yeah,
I trust that
yeah,
you're going to make good judgments about how you're getting your work done. I
right.
trust you're going to make the best decisions for your family in this time because everybody, I mean, as women working from home, right? You're holding the whole emotional energy for the family.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Single parents, you're holding the whole emotional energy for what's going on with the family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
The whole bag, for sure. Yeah, you're right. And it's difficult. Working from home is not always the easiest thing until you get into that routine, but to have no precedence and just start doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Right.
So have that conversation.
Right. Right. So yeah, starting with your energy, moving into committing, right? Committing to what you believe to be is important, right? Really kind of having that clarity around um if my value is family first and then work second, it's okay. Make the commitment and make your decisions accordingly because that's going to help you get through what this is and it's going to put you in a frame of mind that you're doing the right things first.
Right. Right.
And that's good, right?
Yes.
So have those conversations. And part of the managing leading is to allow that clarity for people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're having one-on-ones, right? So that the advice is have the team, but also have the one-on-one
Right.
because the one-on-one is important in this time to stay. That's part of the connection because not everybody's going to share everything in as a group,
Exactly.
but the
Exactly.
one-on-one thing is going to be very important.
Yeah. And I don't think that it has to be always a video call one-on-one. We
No.
use Slack a lot and I
Yeah.
check in with everybody individually throughout the day. How are you doing now? Is there anything you need? So
Mm-hmm.
there's different touch points that you can create without making it feel like it's really rigorous, right? But
Right.
people feel that you
Right.
care,
Right.
right?
Right. And so I think some people who have people skills on the bottom level of their capabilities and interests are going to struggle
Mm,
and they're going to rationalize. They might be thinking, I just need to let people have space to do what they need to do to handle what they need to handle.
right.
And just be careful that you're not convincing yourself I don't need to connect to people because I'm
Mm-hmm.
giving them space.
Right, right. I was going to say the difficulty on that one is if you haven't had those conversations and you haven't shared as a manager what your expectations are and had that conversation back and forth about what they can give and what they can't give in this particular time, the disconnect can happen pretty quick about what I'm
Yeah.
expecting of you. And I'm assuming that you know what I expect of you, and you're
Hmm.
not giving it, I don't think. And all of a sudden the mistrust happens, right? It turns on a dime. So
Right.
how to have those conversations.
Right. 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 And then, create some stability and some clarity through, the weekly daily goals, right? How are you breaking it down,
Yeah.
right? Is it work as normal? Can it be work as normal? If it's not work as normal, how are you restructuring that sense of achievement, sense of accomplishment?
Hmm.
What can you really go after? What's realistic, right?
Right, right. And how do you celebrate those wins as well, right? So we in our huddles, we set our plan for the day, which we never did before, but now we do. What are you
Yeah.
working on? Do you need help? That sort of thing. And then we have little wins along the day, which they'll ping us and say, just finish that and woohoo, and things like that. It doesn't seem like a lot, but you're
Yeah.
acknowledging people. And when you don't, as you were saying before, you know, verbal and nonverbal are really critical, right? And so if they
Right.
can't see that you're happy, they don't know
Right.
that you're happy.
Right.
So
Right. And speaking of celebrating, in conversations with one of my other coaching clients, talked about doing a virtual happy hour. So at
yeah,
the end of the week, everybody log on with your video and bring your beer,
love it.
bring your wine, sit down, have a conversation, not work related.
Yeah,
Because if you're used to going out for drinks on a Friday with a couple of your coworkers, why are you not doing that virtually? Right. And I think that's a great
I think
idea.
it's a tremendous idea.
Zoom drinking.
Yes, it's a whole new thing.
It's a whole new thing.
Uh,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
But you have to be creative. And I think what's going to come as a change of all of this, like one of those opportunities, one of those possibilities, is that
Mhm.
people will be more creative,
Yes.
right? And how they engage, how they're willing to work. Yeah.
Right. Right. And look for those stories. I'm sure people are posting stuff on Instagram. I'm sure there's somebody's telling that story, and I'd be looking for the upside of inventiveness, right?
Hmm.
What are people inventing to cope, to deal? I laughed at my friend Marshall, who posted on his Facebook page a picture of him and his looked like his neighbors, but they were all out in the front yard, but they were all 6 feet apart. And it was this giant, they were in lawn chairs all spread around with a cooler in the middle. Happy hour
Yes.
during the coronavirus.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the stuff we need to celebrate and share.
Yeah. Right. Right. The irony and the weirdness and
Mm.
all that stuff.
Yeah, that was great.
So that's just sort of kind of to wrap on your attitude part, right? So positive energy, being connected to what you believe, clear on your values, readjusting what your goal centers are,
Mm.
and what the reality of that is now, and focusing on what those are. And the goals are not just relative to work goals,
No.
personal goals. What are the opportunities? Because the next piece of this is really, how do you turn adversity into opportunity?
Hmm.
And really going, what is the opportunity of being with your family all the time?
Right.
What is the opportunity of being able to set your work hours in a way you haven't been able to before? What is the opportunity of no interruption,
Hmm.
really, unless you're on instant messaging, which, maybe turn that off.
Yeah.
Um, what is all that mean for you? And really thinking about it in those terms,
Hmm.
because this is not all bad.
No.
This is not all bad. And being forced through this kind of instant disruption and this kind of change is a test of your flexibility, is your agility, is your all that stuff.
Yes.
But that's growth. That's opportunity to like, okay, I get a chance to do this different. You might actually like some of the stuff that you change.
Oh, I would imagine there's going to have some lasting effects. And I was laughing. I was talking to somebody this morning about agility, which is
Mm-hmm.
a buzzword, right? Everybody
Yep.
wants to have agile organizations. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them struggle with it, or struggle with not the concept of it, but how do you actually make that happen in
Mm-hmm.
the structures that we've had in place, right? The norms of what we're always working doesn't always allow for agility.
Right.
But all of a sudden, everybody within a day turned on a dime and had to be agile.
Right.
So what do you learn from that of what is possible?
Right, exactly. And I always think of agility as how fast can you learn, fail, make a change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that, okay, that didn't work. Let me try this. Okay. That didn't
Mhm.
work. Let me try this.
What
Right.
this is all
Yesterday was
about.
super sucky. So let me figure out how I want to do it different today
Yeah.
because I had too many, the dog was in the
Yes.
or whatever. And that's the beauty of it. And you get a sense of accomplishment and achievement because you move through things much quicker.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the last part of attitude adjustment is taking the time to actually help other people.
Yes.
Right? Because when you think you've got it bad, think about what's going on for other people outside of your sphere. Right. So one of the things I got this morning was an email from the conference board that gave detailed information on what are the service jobs that have been hit the hardest relative to this whole pandemic. But the highest ones are the full service restaurants, the temporary health services, and the limited, so all those hourly restaurant people, right? And when you think about your favorite restaurants and where what you take for granted, all of those bartenders and servers and chefs and hostesses and whatnot, those people are out.
They're out, and they they rely on their tips. So even the EI or the UIC, I don't know what you call it in the US, but they're not going to get much on that either. So they are the hardest hit. My daughter-in-law lost her job on Monday. She's a server.
Right. Your hairdresser.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Personal services, those people who are like close to you that are now like, I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
And so, are you reaching out to those people that you're familiar with, restaurant owners that and, can you be of service? Because I think what you have to realize is while you might be frustrated and anxious about what you've got in your immediacy, there's other people, there are other things that are way worse.
Yes.
So spend some time giving back, spend some time figuring out how you want to do that, because what that does is it really keeps your head in perspective about where you are. Right. The worst thing you have to do is keep your dog quiet while you're on your Zoom meeting. Life is not so bad.
Exactly. No, and I always do believe what goes around comes around. So, and you give what you get. So good intentions, send them out to the world, connect with those people. And if it starts to hit you in a different way, they'll be there for you as well.
Right. Right. Karmic.
Yes.
Right. So I think a lot of that, and the last kind of buzzword I want to touch on is resilience.
Yes. We started off talking about that before we got on the call. It's big.
Yes. And I think my sense of it is if you can work through some of the stuff that we've talked about, that is all the stuff that keeps you resilient.
It does. It fills you up, right? And creates that resiliency that you need to survive in these really uncertain times, right? It gives you the energy, the positivity, the connections, the virtual happy hours, everything that you need to be a resilient person in this time. And longer, right? Learn from it. What are the pieces that helped you become a more resilient person?
Right.
So I think, journaling during this time would probably be really wise for a lot of people to capture and the essence of what's changed in them. It was changed in you that will help you be a more resilient person in the future.
Right. It's sort of standing outside and looking at the humanity of what happens and being exceedingly human in and of yourself. But it's slow down to really take a minute and think about what are all the things that you can change in this moment for yourself and what you can take from this, because that is what resilience is about, right? I can take from this terrible thing that's giant inconvenience, and it's going to get harder before it gets easier. And I think that's the thing you really want to get your head around is we're at the front end of this, and the economic impacts of how long it's going to take to recover from this, and the duration, which is what we don't know, right? All of the things we don't know. But as you pull from these things and go, okay, what does that mean? And what am I getting from this?
Right. And what can I control versus what can't I control? And that's a big mindset shift, right? We try to control things that we can't control.
Right.
And so let's take what we can, the positive shifts that we can control, that we can't,
Right.
we can, we can really focus in our 1-inch square, really, of what we can control. Right.
Right. And I think if you're going to lead your team through this and those conversations on what you can control is part of that confidence building experience as well, right? Of what you can control about your own 6-foot radius, your own hand washing, your own whatever that is for you, in what you can really control about the work, right? What are you going to get done in the day?
Yeah.
How much can you realistically accomplish with what you have going on in the environment you're in? And really being okay about setting those kind of expectations.
Right. Yeah. And stay positive.
Yep. Positivity is the key.
Yes, it is.
Key. And if you find yourself getting down, getting depressed, if you're a negative Nancy, if you're a Debbie Downer, right? You tend to focus on the problem because there are people out there. I know there are.
Sure.
Who are the positive influences in your life? Who are the people that bring you up? Who are the people that make you laugh? Reach out to those people. Right. Connect to those people.
Yeah, help them bring you up, because it could be a long time where we're stuck in our homes, right? Even if it's 3 weeks, if you're a normally negative person, that's a long 3 weeks, right?
Yes.
And so shifting that mindset, reaching out to those people that can help you get there. And I think journaling is probably a great thing for people to start thinking about, why did I have a negative thought about that? What could I have changed it into to be a positive thought? How could I have reframed it?
Right. Self-reflect.
Yeah.
Self-reflect. That journaling and self-reflection, because what that does is it makes you self-aware around what you're feeling. And if you can own what you're feeling, you can do something with it.
Exactly. That's it. I love that.
That's it. All right. Well, hopefully this has been a little bit helpful for all y'all. We're going through it with you. You're not alone.
We are. So, Jen and I might do this a little bit more frequently in the next coming weeks so that we can kind of stay connected, and feel free to reach out to either one of us through LinkedIn.
That's right.
And we're going to post this on LinkedIn. Reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to walk you off a ledge if you're on a ledge, or to tell you what our clients are doing or what we're doing to manage our teams.
Exactly. And we're staying focused on that because I think whatever we can do to help people help us, it helps us to help you. So let's do that.
All right. Stay safe, everyone.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, and please visit Sandi's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca, and Jen's website at managementpossible.com. Thanks again.